I'm co-host James Ash.
And I'm co-host Phil Scaife.
Welcome to the Business Lockdown.
Welcome to today's episode of the Business Lockdown. And today we'd like to welcome Martin Johnson to the show.
Welcome, Martin.
Thanks, guys. Brilliant to be here. Looking forward to it. Very much so.
Likewise. So Martin's background, starting in the military and moving to major global business and at a high level. And then right back to grassroots, CEO, founder of Trans2 Performance. As the business says, delivering insight, developing people and inspiring change. Flicking through your testimonials, Martin, they're from small businesses, they're from large businesses, huge businesses, universities, professional sports bodies, covering all bases. So trainer, consultant, motivational speaker, author, parent. Where do we start? Welcome to the show.
Thanks,
Welcome,
Phil.
there we go, isn't it?
Yeah, when you was going through them there, it was making me smile because when you got to parent, that's the one I still haven't cracked yet, without a shadow of a doubt. I always say to people, being a parent is the toughest job. It's the hardest job on the planet. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm a parent of three myself. And do you see overlaps between, you're delivering leadership training to rooms of hundreds, if not more, in major businesses, and then you're back at home with your kids? Do you see overlaps there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for anyone who's sort of listened to my talks or heard me speak, whether it's online or at an event, I always draw the parallels between being a parent and being a leader or a colleague in the workplace, certainly when it comes to being a leader. Because it is very similar in many senses, in the fact that, I've got three children. So most people, I would guess, would have two or three children. But I have three children. We was foolish and went one more time when we said we was done. How hard can it be? Well, let me tell you, the third one is like, But there is some parallels there in the fact that your children are all different. So my three children have been born to the same two parents. They've been brought up in the same house with the same culture and the same rules. But the three of them are completely different. The way they interpret those situations as they grow and their brain function grows, they're completely different characters. So you can't parent in exactly the same way with three children. And if I always draw the parallels to the fact that if you're a leader in the workplace, you can't lead and manage every person in your team in the same way, because they're all wonderfully different and they have different motivations and personality styles, etc. And if you're a salesperson, you can't sell to every customer in the same way, if that makes sense. Yeah. So it's this mastering the art of being the social chameleon in life is what I think fundamentally runs through whether you're a parent, leader, colleague, salesperson, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I did see that on hear that rather on one of your podcasts. I think where you were chatting with your eldest daughter, is it? And you talk about communication and learning, and how you and her are very functional. Yeah, you want to get to the punchline. That resonates with me. I like to get to the full stop. Whereas your middle daughter is different. And it was very nicely highlighted that.
It is. My eldest is very much going to be, we do a lot of work at Trans2 around personality styles and psychometric testing and unconscious biases and motivators and all of this great stuff. And so I start to see some of this in my kids. So I can also, my 11-year-old, my eldest, I think she's very much developing an analytical personality style. So she likes to do things properly and she likes to go down to the detail and she likes to explain everything methodically. Now, I've got the patience of a gnat, right? I'm like, come on, just get to the point, will you? And she's like, and she can't miss anything out. So she'll say, Daddy, guess what I did at school today? And I'll go, what? And she'll go, well, I arrived at 9:00. And then we did the register. And then I'm like, right, just just what did you do at school? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas my middle daughter, she's more like me. She won't even tell you what she did. So if you asked her, she'll just get straight to the point and went, oh, we played sport in the afternoon. So the difference between the two of them, as they're both developed, and there's only 20 months difference in my two daughters.
Yeah.
But the way they're interpreting the world already and the way their brains are developing through nature and nurture, which we know a lot about in the line of work we do, they're going to be completely different personalities. So how I parent and engage with my two daughters has to be consistent in the non-negotiables, but different when I want to engage and collaborate and get the best out of them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So obviously this overlap between the business world and the home life. I'm guessing. I mean, we'll go on to Trans2 Performance in a minute, but I'm guessing they've collided right now. Are you normally at home this much?
No, I'm not, and it's a challenge. Funny enough, I've just wrote a blog and a paper on this morning, which has gone out on our social media, and it was how to juggle your work whilst working at home with a very busy household, whether that's partners, friends, pets, whatever it might be. And if your house is like my house, my wife lives on Amazon, so I've got the Amazon guy turning up 3 times a day, ringing the doorbell, while I'm on conference calls. So how do you stay productive, and how do you maintain your focus whilst all this is going on around you? And I think most people out there right now during COVID-19 and in isolation are experiencing this in abundance, in the fact that if you've never worked from home before and you don't have any form of routine, and this is the big thing, any form of routine, then what you're left with is 5 or 6 people in a household who are all operating autonomously, doing their own thing, and then clashing at points where we're disturbing people when they're on a call or getting in each other's way or whatever it might be. So in the paper I wrote this morning, I said it's got to be, there's 2 things that people are doing, that families are doing right now, and they go into the one end of the spectrum or the other. So they've got no routine and structure, so every day it's just a bun fight and everybody's getting on it in everybody's way, or the parents are being incredibly regimented on this side. So it's like, right, you get up, you get your breakfast, you do your homeschooling, we go for a 3K walk and blah, blah, blah. And then the kids just don't play ball, so everybody's arguing. So you've got to find the middle ground. And I think, it's not an exact science, but I think those households right now who have got a loose structure, so they're chopping the day up into maybe 2 or 3 periods, but there is flexibility within that loose structure. And also, so for example, my loose structure is we get up in the morning, and the morning is what we call the working period. So I work in the office. My wife catches up on whatever she needs to do. The kids are doing their homeschooling in the kitchen after the breakfast. And we have that one period where we're all busy working. Then we have sort of 11 till 2 p.m. over lunch, where it's like, the family period. So we have our lunch together. We go for a walk. We play in the garden. We do go to the gym or go for a run. It's like the leisure activities throughout the middle period of the day. And then what we do in our house is towards the end of the day, sort of 2 p.m. to 5 p.m., we call it the free period. So we've had the working period, we've had the family period, but now it's a free period. So anybody can do what they want. I can come back to work and do some more work in the afternoon. Kids can binge on Netflix or go on the computers. Wife can go shopping on Amazon and order another 5 million things, right? So we have the periods. Now, that's a structure, but we're incredibly loose in it. So if, for example, we get up on day 56 and the kids don't fancy doing their homeschooling in the morning, we just chuck it, we just miss it out, or we push it to the afternoon.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is if you're listening to this and you are struggling with the balance of being productive in your work and managing your home life and the busy household, you need some routine. Otherwise it's the Wild West, right? So you need some loose routine, but within that have the flexibility to morph and change with the situation. And, if you do that, it's probably the best chance you've got of getting through it in some fashion.
No, you're absolutely right. And I've mentioned it before on the show, where we collided very badly in the first week or 2 of this, because we all The kids saw it as a holiday. I saw it as still being at work. My wife is also a business owner, so she needed to be at work, but also needed to be a parent. And it was just an almighty mess. And we've slowly evolved into something similar to what you're describing there, just sort of naturally. And we found the pattern that works. And it's those areas of overlap again, isn't it? Where it's negotiable. It has to be negotiable.
It does, and also you mentioned it when we was chatting at the start or before we started. It's this notion of acknowledging that disturbances are going to happen, right? So don't be frustrated with it. So, like you say, I've been on a conference call where my kids wandered in behind me to go and grab something, and I've just made a light-hearted joke of it to the client and actually introduced my daughter to the client, and she's like getting all sheepish because she's on the camera, and my client's saying. So you've just got to embrace it as well. The fact that, yes, let's have some routine, a loose routine. Let's be flexible within it. But obviously acknowledge the fact that, you know, everybody's trying to do the best in the house. And there's going to be times where it slips and not to fly off the handle. Because I think that's, as a parent, that's sometimes the frustrating thing, isn't it? We're very quick to react to a situation when they don't know. They don't know what's going on, or they don't know any better.
Yeah. And also with the external pressures that are around us right now in many new ways. So cue any one of my kids coming in at any point during this interview just to prove that point.
Well, I said to you two, I'm band man. I've sent them out for a walk. It's going to rain soon though. So if it rains, they'll be jumping back in and there'll be chaos.
So let's just
speak about routine. About routine is that is the main topic, the main area that has come through majority of our episodes is the importance of routine.
Yeah.
People have given us insight into how they've developed and switched their routine, tried to, get up at the right time, go into a room. So that's them physically going into work. And, so that's been really interesting and coming through. And that also, people struggles within routine.
Yeah.
Whether it's exercise or family life. Certainly that first, as Phil said, that first week for him was a real struggle, and it's been interesting, not only with our interviewees, but what you see online as well is that people have, there was a lot of evidence of families working out together, and it was almost that honeymoon period, and then that didn't kind of continue for very long with smiles on people.
It was the Joe Wicks morning routine. It was like the first 4 days of lockdown. Everybody was on social media doing the Joe Wicks. You don't see it anymore now, do you? No one's doing Joe Wicks anymore.
That was the Instagram picture of lockdown, wasn't it? And now everyone's gone, sod Instagram.
Everyone's back on the Pringles and the booze now. It's like sod it. Let's just get fat in lockdown, and we'll start when it finishes. Yeah. But I think my point on that is, and it sort of in any life, whether it's you're working in your business or you're trying to reach a goal or you're trying to achieve something, what most people do is that they go too strict with the routine. Does this make sense? They go too rigid with the routine. And when we coach business executives and we coach team leaders and managers of operations, this is the managers who get it wrong, for example, in the workplace, are the ones who go too rigid with their departments and with their routines, because things are fluid. If you think about it, in most situations, things are fluid. So you need a structure, framework, you need a routine, but you've got to have what we call, there's a great trait that I talk about a lot in personal development, and it's called clock speed. I don't know if you've heard of it, but clock speed is a person's ability to read a situation, think on their feet, and respond accordingly. And it's called clock speed. Whereas people without clock speed will go through a situation, and even when the situation's changing, they will just blindly keep trying to put a square peg through a round hole. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's like, let me give you an example. It's like the sales guy who goes into a sales meeting and he's trying to do his mission of discovery and his meeting and the client is coming back and objecting to potentially the avenue we're going down, or they're showing some concerns. Now, instead of the salesperson recognizing and picking up on the client's body language and words and tone, they continue through their fantastic sales training to go through the methodology, and I'm going to sell you this product, right? And the client's getting pissed off. I mean, the client is sat there, and you're not you've not got the clock speed to pick up. So you carry on regardless and wonder why you come out without the opportunity, if that makes sense. Whereas a great salesperson will be following their methodology, but then they'll realize mid-meeting that something is changing and something's not working. So they will interpret that information and shift target. And I think that's just an example of a salesperson. But I think the key to going through anything is have a routine, have a plan, have a structure. Because let's face it, one of the common denominators of success in every environment is having that goal, that law of attraction, and having a plan to get there. But you've got to, the most productive people I meet are the ones who are fluid. They've got the clock speed to read situations and shift target and slightly move depending on what's happening in front of them. Does that make sense?
I've got a couple of examples. I had a career in mental health. So I was 6.5 years in mental health, secure unit, behavioural assessment. And I know you said about that the importance of that consistency in terms of approach with your children, but you've got to be flexible with them as individuals as well. And I used to see it. I mean, I was 19 when I started, and I quickly went from being a teenager into an adult. A lot of responsibility, and just thrived off the trust that I was given and the environment that I was in. It was a dangerous environment essentially, and I used to see staff get it so wrong. And like you said, there would either be too jovial with patients, and then when they needed to get the respect, they had no chance. Or you'd have people in the other way where there'd be, just pure discipline, very direct. And then when they tried to have a laugh and a joke, there's no chance. And I always used to pride myself on being in that middle ground where I could relate to them, but there was discipline and structure. And so if there was ever a serious situation that went on, I could command respect and it'd be dealt with as safely as possible. Likewise, if you've got a situation and you just want to produce positivity and get the most out of the session, you can do that in equal measure. And I used to thrive off that kind of like middle ground. And I really felt I took that into business in terms of people often say, oh, you'd be a great salesman. And I hate that word because I think as a salesperson who just picks up the phone as many times as possible with a script is my worst nightmare. I just hate that. What I do thrive upon is meeting people around the world and chatting with them and getting to know them, what makes them tick, and really like finding out about their journey. And so this is, we've got this platform, it's great. And we had a clothing company years ago, and my business partner and I ran a football team, and we had a guy that was on the team. He was a salesman, years worth background of being a salesman. So we thought, perfect, we'll take him to a exhibition that we were trading at in London. That was an eye-opener. I tell you, that was an eye-opener because he really struggled. It was a same approach to every person. And like you just said there, you gave an example, he couldn't come away from that scripted approach. Whereas for me, if I've got a 16-year-old or a 60-year-old arrive on the stand, I'm just getting to know them. I'm not selling. I'm getting to know them and having a conversation. And my approach will be based on who they are. I'm just getting to know them as I would if I was sat on a beach or in a cafe and met somebody. And that does resonate what you were talking about there. I think that's key. You've got your structure and your methods there. But find out how people.
It's also a very relevant skill right now, isn't it? Clock speed. Mm-hmm. Because within the space of a few days of March 2020, everything changed, and you had to be able to not work to a script.
Yeah. And I've spoke to a lot of people about this as well. So just touching before we go on to that, just touching upon a thing I always say to people. I mean, we study performance psychology, and we do a lot in performance psychology. And when we run sessions, people always sometimes terrified of me and the consultants at T2 because I think we're reading the body language and judging them every 2 minutes and stuff. But one of the key indicators and for anyone listening to this and for yourselves going forward, one of the key indicators of clock speed is simply this: people who ask questions. Because if you're in a dialogue with somebody, what tends to happen is people without clock speed are not listening with intent. They are simply waiting for their turn to talk. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you will say a lot of stuff, valuable stuff in any interaction, and instead of picking up on that and asking questions to then try and understand what that person is thinking, what that person wants, you know, a bit more about that person, you will just respond with something about yourself. And you've all met those people where you know they are not listening to a word you are saying. They're just waiting for their turn to talk, to turn the conversation back around on them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you can only show clock speed in any environment, whether it's down the pub with your friend, or whether it's in a sales meeting, or whether it's, you know, in the workplace with a colleague, if you are listening with the intent to understand, and therefore you're asking questions back. So if you've got somebody who is asking you questions, they're showing a degree of clock speed already. So that's like a really important point from a social sciences perspective. But you made a point there as well, Phil, about right now, it's about having the clock speed to shift and change your focus, given the current situation. Now, I've been incredibly frustrated with some of my clients in the last 6 weeks, and I've been incredibly proud of others. And the difference between that is some people are becoming a victim of their circumstance right now. So they're doing nothing, or they're blaming every reason as to why they can't be successful because of COVID-19. And they're just waiting for it to pass, which is like being a sitting duck.
Yeah.
And some people are understanding that actually I can do that, or I can shift my focus or my target or whatever it might be. And to those people listening to this who might say, yeah, but Martin, that's bollocks, because I'm a bricklayer, and I can't work on sites at the minute, so I'm fundamentally dead in the water. Or the services I provide, right? I'm a photographer, so I can't go out and I can't take photographs because we're all in isolation. So how can I make my money? I'm going to give you this as an example. A photographer actually said that to me. Said, Martin, it's all well and good for you who can shift target and do what you do from home, but I'm a photographer. How do you expect me to go out? So I said, right, so you can't go and do photo shoots, right? So he said, right. I said, so what can you do? He said, well, that's what I'm telling you, nothing. I said, right, so if you think you can do nothing, then that's exactly what you will do. I'll ask you that question again. What else can you do? And he said, but photography is my area of expertise, so I can't just go and do something that I'm not used to. I said, okay, let's stay in photography. What can you do? What can you do from home? What can you do? And he said, well, there was a time when I used to take up people's old photographs, you know, from like back in the day of the nana and granddad when they first got married in the old sepia photos. He said, well, I used to get them. They used to send them to me. I used to restore them so they looked better, and then I'd charge them a fee and send them back. I went, now we're talking. So how many people in lockdown are going through their old photographs who maybe want them restoring, and you can be the man who can do it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? You know, and that's an example of where you can become a victim of your environment, or you can shift your focus, show some clock speed, and just slightly adjust. There was one guy who was selling, he's got an e-commerce site selling multiple different products. It's like a mini Amazon, really. Anyway, he can't ship a lot of his products at this time. So he instantly shifted target, and he bought 1,000 thermometers from China. You know what you put under your tongue?
Yeah.
And his theory was that mums and dads want to be testing the temperature of their kids more than ever, right? So he sold out of these thermometers in a week, and he shipped a load more in, and now he's making money selling thermometers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're absolutely right, Phil. I think clock speed is interpersonal, but clock speed is also understanding situations and slightly shifting your focus to still be successful.
Yeah. Well, it's like I watched some of your YouTube speeches, presentations and things, and the one that stuck with me, your 3 rules of life. Rule number 2, with your fantastic drawing of a boat. It was great because I'll let you explain your second rule of life. But I mean, at the time, obviously, it was beginning of the year, and you got very emotional about Brexit.
Yeah.
And who'd have thought, like, just a few months later, we're like, Brexit? What was Brexit?
Bring back Brexit right now. We'll all deal with it. So. Yeah.
One thing that Phil mentioned when he introduced you, Martin, which is one quote statement that you use for your business, is inspiring change. And I think my question is, how can you give us an example or examples of how this change, when we look at COVID-19, this current climate, has inspired you?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things it's really done for me is, well, two things really. I was getting a little bit of, I've always worked out. I've been in the military. I played rugby. I've always been physically fit. And I've got to admit, starting a business 5 years ago, I was getting a bit slobbish. You know, I've never been so unfit as what I have in the last sort of 18 months. So I've really got back on the horse with that. And I've trained every single day for 50 days consecutive. So I can't tell you the difference that that's done for me, you know, both mentally and physically. Now, you know, I say not many people know this about me, but I've said it too often on videos and talks now. But 18 months ago, maybe 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition called Sjogren syndrome. Now, Sjogren syndrome is like multiple sclerosis or lupus, where your immune system attacks your body. And mine attacks the moisture-producing glands in my body. So anything that produces moisture, like my lungs or my eyes, you know, my mouth, my salivary glands, it attacks the tissues and kills them. So then I have an array of symptoms, like I struggle with breathing, I have chronic dry eyes, get a dry mouth, which for a speaker is a bloody nightmare. I have joint ache, I have chronic fatigue. So I got into a bit of a victim mindset with it. And you know what? In lockdown, I've trained for 50 consecutive days, just a 3K run every day and a 45-minute workout in the garage. And I feel amazing. And my symptoms of Sjogren syndrome have almost vanished. So I think that's one lesson I've learned when I come out of this. I need to maintain a level of fitness and a healthy, you know, health and exercise to just for my overall well-being. But the other one's interesting, which has sort of crept up on me, and maybe I never envisaged that it would, which is slowing my mind down. Because as you can probably tell, I operate at 1,000 miles an hour. I run a business. We do what we do. We're all over the country. We flew into Europe and around the world doing our training and our consulting last year, and it takes its toll. But because I've had a chance to be in lockdown, my mind has slowed down. And what I mean by that is sometimes now I'm working on maybe 2-3 things in the day, maximum. Whereas in a normal day in the office, I'm running a business, I'm liaising with all my staff, I'm delivering to customers, I'm on with the accountant, I'm trying to write content, I'm recording podcasts, and all of a sudden I get home at the end of the day and I wonder why I'm absolutely knackered. So I've slowed my mind down, and the one thing that's benefited me on that is really putting some thought and clarity and focus into one or two things rather than many things. And you know what? I wrote a book 2 years ago, and one of the chapters in the book is on the power of 3, but I never adhere to it. If I'm honest, that's the one thing that I renege on, which is focus, because I'm juggling all of these different activities. And what I wrote in my book was this: is in neuroscience and in the brain, we've strapped people up to brain scanners and we watch where the blood flows to the brain when we're doing different activities and encountering different situations. And one of the tests we did was on multitasking. So, you know, these people who say, I am a great multitasker, I can do loads of things at once. Well, it's scientifically proven that we can't. So there was various experiments done where people focused on one thing and some people were asked to do 2 or 3 things at the same time. The productivity and the ability goes through the floor when we multitask. So the notion says that we should only focus on 3 things at any one time, period, but one thing in any one moment. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I can have 3 things on my to-do list today, but I will only deal with one in any one given moment. And that's the one thing that I have not done. And going into lockdown and isolation, I've been able to do it more. And some of the output we have produced is phenomenal. So I'm really going to try when I return to work to maintain that headspace and that focus. But I tell you, it's easier said than done, isn't it? Yeah.
I remember seeing a visual from Kurt. We're big fans of Kerwin Ray. I'm not sure if you've heard of him. He's based in Sydney. He's been our team have just been in awe how he's the content he's put out since COVID-19, and he grabbed hold of it very quickly. You know, COVID care packages. He had his senior team working with people on an individual and team basis. It was amazing. I remember there was a subject of multitasking, and I remember the visual he showed, and it was like it was a funnel. And he said about all these balls going into the funnel, and you're trying to deal with them all, and they clog up. Whereas he said if you've got, and he just showed one ball going through at a time. So just like you said, focus on that one ball, and they were moving through one by one. Whereas before they're all clogged up, and so it's exactly.
In my book, I get you to do a quick exercise. So the way I demonstrate that is I get you to write on a piece of paper numbers 1 to 21. So just in a row, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 21, and time yourself. So you time yourself doing that. And then I get you to write, I am a great multitasker. Just write it out and time yourself. And then the total time it takes to write one out and then the other out, you record your time. And then I get you to redo the exercise, but I get you to put the first number and the first letter and the second number and the second letter. So you'll go 1, I, 2, M. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you do that, when you do the second version, you are multitasking. You're trying to spell a sentence out as well as follow sequential numbers. So on average, when we put delegates in our experiences and experiments to the test, they take an extra 25 to 30 seconds to do the multitasking version than do them in isolation. And the reason for that is your brain. The way your brain works is you cannot switch from one task to another without your brain momentarily being affected. So it's why when you're on the phone trying to feed the kids, right? Trying to feed the kids with a pan on for the evening dinner. It's why it's chaos, because you can't, and it's why mistakes are made. So yeah, there's something scientific around it. And I think for those people who working from home can have its distractions, don't get me wrong, but what working from home also can give you is that undivided attention to a task at hand. Because when you're in the office, someone constantly going, Martin, can you check this? Martin, can I have a chat? Martin, and then your social media is going off and your instant messages going off and your emails are coming in. Whereas being at home, I can shut the door and I can bury my head in something and lose 2 hours. And do you know what's interesting? I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but in performance psychology, we talk a lot to our customers about the state of flow. Don't know if you've heard of the state of flow or the flow state theory. Well, the flow state theory, I've entered the state of flow more in lockdown than I have in the past 2 years in the office. Because what the state of flow says is when the challenge of a situation is high and your skill set can match it in equal measure. So you've got the challenge is high. This is challenging for me, but I've got the skills to pull it off. I enter the state of flow, which means I lose 2 hours. Do you know when you've got your head buried in a project and time either stands still or you lose 2 hours and you don't know where the time's gone? You haven't eaten, you haven't drank, you've just been in the zone. That's what we call the state of flow. And it's where human beings are the most productive. Whereas anything outside of that is going to cause us distractions, anxiety, or boredom. So, reaching the state of flow has been quite interesting for me because I've got up at 7 o'clock. I've had my breakfast and a coffee, and I've got stuck into, like you say, we've been doing a lot of battle guides and a lot of COVID-19 stuff for our customers. Before I know it, it's lunchtime. And I think, where do those 3 hours go? Now, that would never happen in the office, right? Because you'd just be pulled from pillar to post. So, yeah, I think my top tip that I've really benefited from is focus on 3 things at any one time, but only one thing in the moment.
So where do you obviously teach a lot to a lot of people of all different walks and sizes of business and things. Where do you get your learning from? Where do you take your point of inspiration, point of learning?
Yeah, I mean, I never used to be a learner. I was quite so I started off in the military, as you know, and then I when I came out of the military, I got a sales job. So I was the to your point, I was the sales guy making 100 calls a day, getting told to piss off 99 times. It was soul destroying. And I started in sales, and then I went into a sales management job, and then I worked for Gartner, the global company, out in Stanford in New York, and that's where I really started to rise the ranks. And within sort of 3 years of working for Gartner, I was running a $5 million territory for them, a $5 million part of their business. And that's where I got into developments, because Gartner were a wonderful company, and they sent me on a load of courses. I did my leadership courses out in Stanford in New York. I practiced in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. Situational leadership. I remember going on that course, and that taught me to be that social chameleon. I studied in emotional intelligence, and they put all of this investment into me, and I fell in love with the development. So I got a lot of investment in my early career from that company. But when I left to set up my own business, it was really about me. I started to read more books than ever. At one point, I was reading 5 books a month, 5 good personal development books a month. I was being consumed by TED Talks. I was listening to podcasts in every car journey. And I was just bringing all of this information in from different areas. And then what I like to do is I like to write my own content. So being inspired by some of the stuff that I was hearing, I was starting to write. I wrote my first sort of bunch of content for the company to launch the company. I had 5 modules. That's what I wrote, 5 modules. And that allowed me to get off the ground. But the biggest source of learning for us is, if you think about it now, we have thousands of clients. We have over 2,000 users on the hub. We have 50,000 followers on social media. We engage with up to 30 people in a room on a daily basis. We're exec coaching people on a one-to-one basis. Our biggest source of learning is learning off them. And this might sound bizarre, but they come to us and pay us for the coaching, which we will give, because don't forget, we've got access to professional sportsmen and women and the military personnel, and we've got fire and rescue services, police forces, we've got corporations, salespeople, right? And we take the best in of what people do, create our content, and therefore we can coach and advise others. But really, for me, if you're a great consultant or you're a good trainer, you're learning from your delegates as much as they're learning from you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And because we've got access to that many data points, and don't forget, we've psychometric tested about 3,500 people now. So we have enough data points to correlate between good performance, low performance. But we learn from our clients as much as they learn from us. And without breaching confidentiality, we can then advise others on, the best practices out there.
It's like a perfect flywheel. The more clients, the better the experience, the better the knowledge base, the more clients arrive. Just perpetually turning.
I might be doing a one-to-one with the CEO, right, on a Tuesday, and he's telling me what he's been doing with his team. That's a great initiative. So I'm just making notes in my book. That's an amazing initiative, right? I'll be coaching him in other areas, but I'll have gleaned something he's doing. Yeah. 2 days later, I'll have another executive in who's struggling with the very same thing that CEO's been doing. So I can go, do you know what? Have you ever tried?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you're the guru. But really, what you are is I believe we are more facilitators. But don't get me wrong, there's an art to it, because you've got to interpret, you've got to listen.
There's got to be an understanding of the individual and the situation and what would and wouldn't work as well, right? You can't. It's not just a 1+1.
There's an art to it. There is, and you've got to understand where it's situationally relevant to guide and advise, and that's another thing. Guide and advise rather than tell and command. But I think the wealth of information that we have, the wealth of research and data through the work that we do, we are very, very lucky and blessed to be in that position to be able to collate all of this. And the funny thing is no matter what you operate, within, whether you're working with sports people, you're working with the military, you're working with public sector, you're working with corporations, you're working with just your friend down the pub, there are some common denominators to success. And the peripherals of success change depending on the environment you're working in. But there are some absolute fundamentals that will never go away in any environment. So what we tend to do is we have our backbone, our theories, which are our backbone of our approaches. And then we piece together what we need, which is situationally relevant for the person. And therefore they get a much more rich and personalized experience rather than it just be a course that you go on. Everybody goes through this course. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the way we've done it. And that's what's been incredibly, I think, successful for us.
So
you mentioned 5 modules. I'm just curious what the 5 modules were. Without drilling down too deep into them, what were the 5 modules to launch your business?
So I wrote a leadership course, so a leadership module, which was very much based around situational leadership, the art of using the right management style with the right person, the right situation. I wrote a new business sales course, customer service. So I wrote a customer service course. I wrote speaking and presenting with power and presence. So one of the things that I was particularly good at naturally, but then I honed it, was I used to speak at a lot of conferences. So I had a lot of experience. So I launched a speaking and presenting module. And the last one, which has been by far the most successful thing that our company have done and still do today, and it's what my book was fundamentally based on, was the Human Iceberg theory. So I inspired by Freud and some of my performance psychology, courses that I'd been on and all the books that I'd read, I quickly started to ask questions around. There were three different layers to personal development with a person. What people tend to do, and you might be familiar with this, is people tend to focus on the outbound behaviors and characteristics of an individual. So if you've gone on any course, you might have gone on Myers-Briggs testing, insight, social styles. You're learning what color you are. I'm a fiery red and I'm an earth green and all the rest of it. And then you get all this analysis and says, you're directive, you're amiable. So we always focus on how we project ourselves to the world, the above the waterline behaviors that people see and observe in you. That's what I call the part of the human iceberg, which is the above the waterline. But for me, what people were growing frustrated with is they grew frustrated with the fact that you'd go on one of these courses, you'd learn a lot about yourself, and then you'd go back into the workplace. 2 days later, you'd get pissed off, rip somebody's head off and go, sorry about that. I'm a red because I've been on this course. Does that make sense? So you go, sorry about that. I'm a red. So you'd use it as a justification for your behavior rather than a mechanism to intervene.
Yeah.
Now, the only way that I could not become one of those companies was to write a module that went deeper than ever before. So I talked about what are the underlying things that drive that behavior in that individual. And through my studies and through speaking with psychologists and really putting a lot of information together, we formed the middle of the iceberg, which is unconscious motivators. And then the bottom of the iceberg was, where do those motivators come from? And what we discovered when we asked a series of questions over interviews to people is that between the ages of 1 to 21 years old, through our parenting, the way our parents parented us, our social exposure, so the mates we grew up with or the state we knocked around on, and our educational, so parental, social, educational, through them three main environments, that's called our sense of purpose. We have events that happened, which in psychology are called anchors. Those anchors cause the motivations to form in you, which then drive and regulate your behavior above the waterline. So once I wrote the piece on the human iceberg, we devised an entire module, an entire day where we would uncover your behaviors, your motivators, and establish your sense of purpose, where it came from. And that really started to give people what we call end-to-end self-awareness. That today has been the most popular course stroke day that we have run. We've run thousands of them, thousands. Because people want to know about themselves and they want to find the answers as to why they get pissed off with certain situations, why they react to this situation, what they're motivated by, what makes them feel great, what triggers the hell out of them, right? And we take them on that journey. So if that answers your question, that they were the first modules. And of course, they've all evolved. Yeah. I mean, I look back at the first material and I'm embarrassed. I think, did I charge people for that?
What's your greatest motivator? What is your greatest motivator, would you say? Is that like asking what your favourite movie is ever?
No, I'm pretty clear. This is the thing. If you are crystal clear on who you are and how you are wired and don't try to change it, just embrace it, then that's the key to really unlocking your potential. So I know exactly what mine is. My motivations, I've got two real motivations in life. It's to be strong and self-reliant. So I don't want to ever have to depend on anybody for anything, which has a real sense of independence within me. I've got to be strong and I've got to be self-reliant. I also need to succeed and achieve in what I do. And this comes out in my testing as well. And the reason why, so mine are not very humanistic. Mine are like goal, target driven, you want to stand on your own 2 feet and you want to succeed in life. But I didn't know the answer for many years as to why I was like that until maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And I always go back to piecing it together to my formative years. And I reckon my father left home when I was 11. My mother struggled on her own with 3 children. We ended up getting evicted from our house and put into a council house. And it's not a sob story because it's no different to a lot of people who have grown up in Hull, right? But the point being is, at 11 years old, I had to be strong and self-reliant. I was cooking my own meals, ironing my own clothes. My father had left, so my mum was struggling financially. And I think from an early age, therefore, I got an anchor in me that said, right, you've got to stand on your own 2 feet and you've got to succeed if you don't want to have this for your children, if that makes sense. And now I link that to why I am the way I am and why I've got this drive and why I want to, why it's never enough and I want to succeed all the time. And because I can correlate the two, whenever I have a wobble, and this is important, if you know your sense of purpose and your motivators, whenever I have a wobble, it's that story I've just told you that gets me back in the room. Because when I think back to what at a core level, at a fundamental level, what is it that is driving me to do what I am doing? That is the thing that will motivate me far more than anything else. So, not many people I find, even in their midlife, in their later life, understand what their true drivers are and where they come from. And with the Human Iceberg work we do, that's what we help people. We help them find that, or at least connect the dots to what it is that's driving them at a deeper level, because that has meaning.
Phil,
that has true meaning.
I'm interested. And Phil, the same as what's your biggest motivator?
My biggest motivator. I need to do the iceberg course.
I'll send you a proposal, Phil.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so. Like obviously the family around me motivate me to move forwards, and it resonates with me when you say to succeed, to be the best that you can be in what you're pursuing, in that singular. That resonates with me. So on the spot, I think I'll pinch half your answer. But yeah, it's definitely something that just listening to that.
I tell you what, I'll tell you what'll be interesting. In psychology, there are only 9 things that human beings can be motivated by.
Right.
So if I tell you them, have a guess. And do you know what I'll do, guys, is I'll get Claire in the office to send you both an online test, and we'll actually test you to see if you come out as what you think you are. But there's only 9 things people can be motivated by. Some of them are humanistic. Some of them are very task and goal focused. So number 1, the first thing you can be motivated by is for things to be perfect, correct, and right. This is a motivator that manifests within you in your early life, that you say, right, I like things orderly and I like things done in the right way. And it's a motivator to be perfect, correct, and right. But the thing about the word right is this motivator means that you also live in a fair and just world. You believe in fairness, you believe in rules, and you'll follow them. And anybody who breaks the rules pisses you off, right? That's what we call a number 1 motivator, to be perfect, correct, and right. Number 2 is to be needed and appreciated by other human beings. So this is a motivator that manifests, which says, in what you do, you need to feel like other human beings need you and appreciate you. It's a very humanistic motivator. And therefore, people with this motivation will go above and beyond for other people in the hope and bid that they get that validation back. What you'll know you have this motivator if you go above and beyond to do things for people and they don't say thank you, or they don't come back in kind, and it really pisses you off. But 2 is a humanistic motivator. You have to feel needed and appreciated by other people. Number 3 is one of my top 2. It's to
does number 2 apply? Do you know when you hold the door open for someone and they don't even look at you, let alone not thank you, they don't look at you and walk past and it
does. It could be that, but it also could be the one in the fact that the right thing to do, the perfect, correct, and right thing to do in that scenario is to say thank you. So you could have a 1 or a 2 if that type of scenario upsets you. 3 is to succeed and achieve. So this is task, goal, flag on the hill. This is like one of my motivators, to say, right, I'm not going to be like a 1. I don't need things perfect, correct, and right. In fact, I'll break the bloody rules just to get to the end game. So three motivators piss one motivators off because they're trying to stick to the rules and do a good job and do it right. And threes are going, sod that, get out my way. I need to get to the end game right now. So threes are very fast paced, very like, and they hate detail.
I don't need to hear the next six.
Absolutely. So threes are like, just get me there yesterday. I've got no patience. But they're very driven people, and they'll work long hours and do what it takes. Fours are to be special and find meaning in life. So fours are, they're very different people. A four motivator is the most rare motivator we come across. We've tested 3,500 people, and I think we've only ever come across about 80 people with a four. It's to be special and find meaning in life. So these people dress differently. They act differently. They're very creative. A lot of them have been to drama school. They're musicians. They're artists, right? And what it says is, in what they do in life, they need to feel like they're changing the world. If they don't have true meaning in what they do, they can't just do like a boring, mundane, process-driven job. They have to change something for the better. They have to shake it up, make it better. It's a rare motivator, but these people are very creative. They think differently to most of the people, and therefore they feel different. If they've ever grown up feeling different to most people on the planet, you've probably got a four motivator. I'm thinking you. I'm definitely thinking you. Fives.
Yeah, just like, change shit up. Yeah, go in and go, right, okay. So this is what everyone else is doing. We're not going to do that, right? We're gonna go at this. And I love looking at different industries and applying some of those methods, some of those creative kind of ideas, and bringing it into an industry that's not even thought about that, let alone implemented things out.
And that's why, I've worked with a few fours and coached them. Fours drive you crazy, but they're capable. They drive you crazy the most of the time, Phil, right? But they are capable of moments of genius. Now, the problem with a four is...
The word was capable.
But do you know what, James? The problem, if you are a four, the problem with a four, to be special and find meaning in life, is the fact that, it's the fact that you sometimes are trying to change something that doesn't need changing, and that's the other side to it. Because all these motivations have really good points and bad points. Fives are to be knowledgeable and smart. So fives want to live in a world where it's knowledgeable and smart. And by the way, these 9 motivators is we use a print testing tool called Print. It's a print profiling tool from the Paul Hertz group in the US. I know you've interviewed H&H on here. They're great, aren't they? Helen and Hannah. We actually license our print profiling from H&H, who have got the UK licensing, so they're very familiar with this profiling tool as well. But fives are to be knowledgeable and smart. Fives live in a world where knowledge is power. Sixes are to be safe and secure. So my wife's a 6. Sixes want to guard against what might go wrong. So they're looking for all the things that might stop our progress, and they want to get ahead of it. They love routine, love structure. And sixes usually want to contribute. They don't want to burden shoulder the burden of leading and pressure. Sevens are to enjoy life and be happy. So sevens are the opposite to sixes. They're like, sod what might go wrong. What are we doing today, and is it interesting? Sevens are like glass half full, shiny, everything's good, positive, can-do attitudes, like spinning lots of plates and doing that multitasking. But sevens are usually socially great as well. And eights, one of my motivators, to be strong and self-reliant. So eights want to be in control. They want to lead. They want to make the decisions. They're good under pressure, but they can be slightly bulldozing, slightly directive, slightly impatient, all of that great stuff. And nines, the final one, is to have peace and harmony. So nines just want everybody to get along. They don't like discomfort, discord, conflict as a general rule. They don't like conflict when it involves them, but they don't mind coming to the fore when the conflict involves others, because they like peacekeeping. But nines really want peace and harmony in the environment. And what the print profiling tool does is it'll percentage match you against the 9 human motivators, and you will end up with a top 2, a major and a minor, which will be strong enough to drive and regulate your behavior. But the key about that is, and I'll ask you what you think yours might be in a second, but the key to that is, for the first time, you're coming down from surface level behaviors and personalities, and you're asking the question, what is driving my behavior from a deeper position? What is manifested within me in the form of a motivation that I have to have met, that I have to fulfill, because it's the way I see the world. So James, you sort of smiled at being a 4, right?
Well, I've got a bit of background with this actually as well, because I sat H&H headquarters and I went through with their 2 seniors the team through that process, and they documented it all, and I got the scholar. I've just had a quick look, see if I have that on email, and it's not on my email history. I can't remember. I'll dig that out. But because there's I'm not sure if you're the same fellow. There's a number of those things that you think, well, yeah, there is part of that, but that's not the ultimate for me. I need to lead, I naturally lead, but I also. People make the mistake with me is that just like that has the case, that I have to take lead on in everything that I do, and that's not the case at all. I love being led by a great leader, but and at times when there's been feedback into like work teams or stuff, and that there's been an issue with always taking the lead, I've made a point then just to go, okay, right, I'm gonna sit back and see what happens. And when I did that, no one took the lead. Like, it's going, right, okay, so I might as well just do it anyway and then bugger what you all say about it. But the interesting point was the number 4, wasn't it? Number 4 was just like, that was out of everything you said, and I'm sure Phil's smiling as well.
But I threw a 7 at you as well, though.
Which was the 7?
7 is to enjoy life and be happy, and very much focused on what can be done and the positives rather than on what can't be done and what could stop us. But I mean, it's hard to predict unconscious motivators because they're unconscious. But over time, we've started to become the certain motivators that you can maybe have an indication that people have. And I would agree, James, I would be surprised if you didn't have a 4 or a 7. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. It's funny because we had Paul Gibson on the show. He was in episode 2, Phil, if I remember right.
Yeah,
episode 2. Amazing guy, super positive. He's an addict to learn and really like no one I've ever met. And it's interesting because I made a note. He said that they have on the flip side with the 4 is changing something that doesn't need to be changed. And I think historically, I've made big leaps and bounds on that side of things, but I would suggest that that's more with people with me, is that I would struggle, if I really knew the potential of somebody or a situation or something that they weren't taking, I would have to just drive it in, and I would really struggle to understand where people didn't get or weren't willing to change. That was a real big issue. And it was Paul Gibson. Paul Gibson gave me a story where he was at a party, and like myself, Paul would be, God, so you're in business? What? And he was talking to someone who had a business. And he's just like, so how does that work? What do you do? And straight away, he naturally found himself just giving value, advice, positivity. And the person he was speaking to took offense and actually brought her boyfriend over. Because she took it that and he just I remember the story. He said, look, we've got a misunderstanding here. Clearly, I've got this situation wrong. This didn't mean to offend you. Sorry you feel like that. And he said he had to walk away. And he said that what that did was that really taught him a big lesson. And I took a lot from that. And since the amount of situations I've been in where I've just been very aware of that and gone against my own instincts and just taken a step back. And the most difficult, and I don't mind showing it, was I was in Asia. I was selling up. I had a business journey in Asia last year, and I got a phone call, and my auntie was diagnosed with incurable cancer. And the thing I took from Paul was being really respectful on where she was at and what was right for her. Where there was always a feeling of, yeah, but have you really not thought about this? Or you should really try that. You should try. Why you got that? And you just had to respect where her head was at, and that could change on a daily basis. And I really learned from Paul's experience. I was in Morocco in November, and there was a girl. She was a travel blogger. She was developing herself as a travel blogger, and she would take products on board that she would get commission from selling. it didn't really matter what the products were. She was more focused on the amount of commission she could get off them. And she gave this example of, one of those maps that you scratch off where you've been to. You must have seen them, and you can put it on your wall and scratch off where you've been to. And she said, "Oh, that would be a really good product," but she said, "I would only get 5% commission off that, whereas I can get to." And I said, "Yeah, but you're not thinking about your audience." And I found myself initially saying, "Look, if you're wanting to build your audience for their benefit long term, you've got to be thinking this." And she just wasn't getting it right. And I just had to, like Paul, I just had to stop myself and just think, there's nothing further I can do on this. Phil, what? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you make an interesting point, and that's the fundamental philosophy of social sciences, is the fact that like we've discussed on this podcast today, we all behave and form personality styles by the time we reach our adult years. They're fundamentally driven by a set of motivators that have manifested within us through our formative years. And they're pretty deep-seated. Now, what you end up doing is you go through life, to your stories there, you go through life trying to fulfill your own motivations. So the guy who was offering advice felt completely comfortable in that situation where he was like, right, I'm going to feel great if I can help this person and I can offer loads of advice, and then I'll go away because my motivators are met, right? Whereas it's highly likely that the person he was talking to had complete different motivators, which actually then felt rather triggered, challenged, or overwhelmed by his behavior. So the fundamental philosophy of it all is that, have you ever heard the saying, treat people how you would like to be treated? Mm-hmm. Bollocks, right? The art of it is we need to treat people how they would like to be treated. And the only way we can do that is to understand what is driving them, what they're motivated by. The only way we can do that is to ask questions and get to know people. So, but then you might say, well, okay, if I spend my life trying to have other people's motivators met, but I don't meet my own, then I ain't going to be happy. And that's a very valid question, because we have to have our own motivators met. But here's sort of the guiding principle, and in experience, what I see happening. If you take the time to understand others and help them have their motivators met, which means you have to take a step in their direction from time to time, then almost always yours are met in return. And for those individuals who just suck the life out of you because you're catering for them all the time and it doesn't come back, well, guess what? You just got to make a judgment call there and cut that tie, right? Two types of people in life: radiators and drainers. There's those who radiate energy and positivity, and those who suck the life out of you, they drain you. So,
energy vampires.
Exactly. So, but if you take the principle of, actually, if you're at a dinner party or you go to a networking event or whatever it might be, and you meet people for the first time, let me get to know you and slightly adjust to you. So then if your motivations are met, I will be friend, not foe. You will be fulfilled. And then almost always mine will be in return. Yeah. Rather than me just going, right, I need to be strong and self-reliant and succeed and achieve. So I'm going to blitz everybody in this room and I'm going to drive the conversations and I'm going to be the loudest. I mean, sometimes that happens, but you get my point. It's about understanding what drives human beings and how we can slightly adapt in every given situation.
I remember listening.
Bill, where was yours?
On that note, I remember listening to Tia Lopez, one of his podcasts, and he was at a party and he bumped into Elon Musk, and he literally had a sort of like 2-3 minute window with Elon Musk, and they got into this amazing conversation apparently, and then he left, and he was like, I know nothing about that guy. That guy just spent the whole time asking Tia, like, what he did, how he did this, how he would approach this problem, how he would deal with that. And so the great Elon Musk does that very thing. It makes it all about the other person. And he walks away just going, right, now I need to meet people like Elon Musk would meet someone. not how I've been doing it previously. And it's
you can Phil, you're so right. You can fundamentally go forward from now on. You can fundamentally gauge in the first 10 seconds of any conversation whether a person, by the way the person asks any remote questions about you or the focus of the conversation or not. You can judge that in 10 seconds. I know people today that I've known all my life who, if you could record every conversation, you do your pleasantries, you go, hi, how you doing, blah, 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 and the conversation is immediately on what they've been doing, on how their business is going, on what they've achieved in the recent past, and it just instantly goes that way. And do you know what now? If I'm in one of those conversations, I just smile and nod. And I don't do anything. I just wait to see if that person's going to go, so anyway, tell me a little bit about what you've been doing.
Yeah.
I just wait for it. And if it doesn't come, then, it's giving you a lot of information about that person. But you're absolutely right, Phil. Some of the most endearing, charming people on the planet will take time, no matter what the status of them compared to the other person is. They'll take time to ask those questions and shift the focus onto the other person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where were you, Phil, on those numbers?
Yeah, I didn't expect a therapy session. Well, I can regret. Number 3 resonated with me. It was also interesting seeing the ones that didn't. Like number 1, for example, to be perfect and correct, for everything to be fair and by the rules and things. So like, no, that feels very, very alien to me. And I think you've got bits of everyone, haven't you? You've got bits of them all. It's all barometers, isn't it? And which ones are the
Yeah, I mean, what you'll find, Phil, is there'll be some that you can categorically say I am not. There'll be 1 or 2 of them. There'll be some where you think, really, that does sound like me. And then there'll be a few where you go, at times, and depending on the situation, I can do that, or that is very much me. And the clever thing about the Paul Hertz group, and H&H probably are in the dark as well, even though they are the licensees for the UK, but they don't share the algorithms with you and the science. But you percentage match against them all, but you don't get any data below your actual results. So, for example, you might, in 3rd place, have another motivator that is a little bit present in you, but only at times, and it's maybe not as strong enough as the others to regulate and regulate and drive your behavior. So you're right, Phil, there'll be some that you categorically not. There'll be 1 or 2 that ring a bell, and there'll be a few others that are in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Like number 6, straight away, when we're talking about routine and being safe and secure, like the words safe and secure, they don't really ring any bells with me, but routine, especially recently, where you're fighting for a routine and you're fighting for that order. But yeah, it's a real yin and yang, that one. You can see both sides of it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
No, I'd be really interested to actually do that properly and actually.
Well, what's interesting as well is the combination of the numbers means something as well. So if you're an 8-3 like me, or you're a 6-1, let's say, or whatever it might be, so a 6-1 would be a different set of analysis to maybe a 6-9. So the combination of the motivations matters as well. And then obviously it starts to give us a picture about, depending on the situation, which motivator is likely to be most present and which one I have to have fulfilled. Because we've had people who are peace and harmony, for example, the peace and harmony, but they've said to me, in the workplace, I have to have peace and harmony. I hate conflict in meetings. I hate awkward phone calls. I hate people challenging you across the office. But when I get home, I've got no problem in arguing with my wife, and it's like, so in different situations, their motivator is coming to the fore. So they might have a different, variation at home to what they do in the work life. I mean, print's very much focused on the working environment, but it's transferable. But yeah, I think it's just that, I'm in my late 30s now, and I will always continue to develop, because neuroscience and social sciences is ever shifting. It's always evolving. We know now more than we knew 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I think Steve Peters' work around the chimp paradox and understanding the brain and the 3 main functions of human existence in survival, reproduction, and purpose, I think that was groundbreaking. I think it makes understanding why we get anxiety, why we experience anger, why we feel threatened, and how that drives human behavior. But I think, just asking the questions constantly of why do we do that? What's behind that? What might be driving that? How can I avoid that going forward? What would I do next time differently if that occurred? I think that's fundamentally the way I live my life, just trying to ask those questions all the time. Just so we're I always say it's like bringing the unconscious into the conscious. So if you think about it, we operate majority of the time entirely in our unconscious, based on emotions, gut instincts, and how our brain works in a nanosecond. So if we can understand what's happening at the unconscious level and bring it into the conscious, we've potentially got a better chance of intervening and keeping ourselves on the right side of our emotions and, our moods and, and productivity than we have if we just operate in the unconscious.
Yeah. Do you have any indicators? One example with myself is if I'm in the car, if I find myself being wound up, that's like, because normally I laugh if I'm in a good headspace and things are all right and I'm training fit and healthy, I laugh at bad driving. I'm in that position. I can not get wound up by it, but when I find myself being wound up, that's a bit like, right, okay, well, what's going on here?
We call them triggers, James. So you have triggers, and triggers are the motivators we was talking around. So when because your motivators are deep-seated and are pretty much the central thing that drive and regulate your world, i.e., if your motivators are being met, then you're happy. You're the best version of yourself. Life is good. When I'm being strong and self-reliant and I'm succeeding and achieving in my life, I am the best version of myself. If someone's trying to curtail my independence, corner me, overrule me, or inhibit my ability to be successful, I am not the best version of myself because my triggers kick in, which compromise my motivators, and then I'm going to be the worst version of myself, what we call your shadow self. So it's all driven by the knowledge of understanding not only what you're motivated by, but what are the trigger points that will challenge that motivator. So let's say, James, you are to be special and find meaning in life, and you need to have true meaning in what you do and be able to change something and make it better. Let's say that's one of your driving motivators. Let's say then you're working with a client or you're in the workplace and you say, right, I've got this idea. I think we could do this better, but it means changing X, Y, and Z. And very quickly, the other person goes, no, James, that's going to take too much. We've always done it this way. If it's not broke, don't fix it. That is a trigger. So what instantly happens in your psyche is the trigger compromises your motivator. You feel your rush of emotions. You get pissed off. And then you'll either engage in an argument as to why it needs changing, or you'll just completely disengage and go into cold conflict, which is not going to solve the issue either. And therefore, we've all got these different motivators that drive behaviors, and we've all got a list of triggers that will compromise those motivators. If you get in your shadow frustrated with drivers, it's probably that you might also have a fast-paced motivator like a 3 to succeed and achieve. So if you was a 4-3, that's a combo, which is an interesting one, where 3s get triggered by anything that's slow, even slow-moving people, like people who walk slowly in the supermarket, right? So if you're one of them who's like getting frustrated because someone's pushing the trolley really slowly and you can't get around them, or you're in a queue to get into Alton Towers and it's not going anywhere, or waiting at airports or whatever it might be, right? Then you've got a trigger that's saying my motivator is to get somewhere fast and this is preventing me from doing it, so I'm going to get pissed off at it. Does that make sense? Whereas there's other motivators that they're quite happy to sit in traffic. If I was peace and harmony and safe and secure, I'm in no rush. As long as we're safe and as long as it's all done properly, I'll work this out. Whereas I'm in the front banging my head off the steering wheel because I've been sat in this queue for 45 minutes. So me and my wife are very much like this. My wife's more patient and she'll get really frustrated with me when I'm getting frustrated because, I'm standing in a queue or things aren't moving quickly. And therefore the self-development around understanding your true human iceberg, how do you behave? What's your personality style? What's your motivators that are driving that? What are your triggers that could compromise those motivators? And where does it come from? What things happened in your formative years that caused those motivators to manifest? If you can have that true full picture of yourself, then you have a fighting chance of managing triggers, fulfilling motivators, and being the best version of yourself. But again, we're all human, right? So we all don't get it right 100% of the time. It's just, you want to be getting it right more often than not.
Love that. Love that.
Yeah.
More often. What you've got? I know you've got a second bookshelf. We can see one bookshelf there behind. Is it? There we go.
They're my kids' books. They're David Walliams. But they're my current crop. So I keep all my books at work. We've got a big bookcase full of all sorts of books, but I have the ones at home that I'm currently either reading or going to read.
What's your favourite from each shelf? If you have a look
from
at
each shelf. Start with David Walliams.
Yes.
Yeah, my favourite. Oh, what's it? My favourite David Walliams, based on what the kids tell me, is Gangster Granny. I think that sounds like a cool book.
Yeah.
I'm reading a book at the minute up there. My favourite book of all time is The Chimp Paradox. I think that book changed my life. But my favourite book that I'm reading at the minute is by Richard Dawkins. So it's anybody who knows Richard Dawkins is like a biologist in the UK, quite famous, and he talks a lot about the arguments for how human beings came about. You either believe in science and the Big Bang, and then we evolved through years of evolution, or you believe in religion. The world, we had a creator, and the world was made. Well, Richard Dawkins has wrote several books around the case for evolution. So he's like trying to dispel religion. I mean, he goes a step further and tries to dispel religion, whereas my view is I'm a man of science. I believe in the Big Bang and evolution and how we were made. I'm fascinated about how we evolved from, the very first species right through to, apes and chimpanzees, right through to Homo sapiens. But, if religion serves you well, I'm a big fan of saying whatever serves you well, as long as it serves you well. So I'm reading the history of evolution by Richard Dawkins, where he lays out the case and all the evidence to how we became Homo sapiens, but how that actually transpired through hundreds of millions of years. And do you know what? That's an example of where if you vary what you read, things start to make more sense. So I don't just read books on personal development and neuroscience, because psychology is our core area of expertise, but I don't just stick in that lane. I read books about evolution so we can understand how human beings have come to this point and, what our fundamental instincts are. I read all sorts of different stuff that you can actually bring in and use in modern day life. So yeah, I'd recommend that. What else am I reading? I've read.
We don't know the title of your book.
I've read some. We'll do that in a minute. I don't want to plug it, but I've read some stuff. Obviously, the Matthew Syed stuff is good, like Black Box Thinking and Bounce. Some great content in there. I tell you what, is a great book, a recommendation for any listeners. A guy called Guy Kawasaki is probably the best speaker I have ever seen live. He really inspired me to be a speaker. Guy Kawasaki was one of the first in Steve Jobs' leadership team in Apple. He was the chief evangelist of Apple. And he wrote a book called Enchantment. And the book is all about social excellence and social sciences and a lot about what we've been talking about today. It's a great book. It's only about £7 on Amazon. It's called Enchantment by Guy Kawasaki. And of course, if you're remotely interested in it, my book's not a bad read either.
What's the title?
So my book is I Am Human, 30 Mistakes to Success. And I tried to do something different with the book, where it was based on 14 years of my experience working in this sector. But it was, I observed that for many of us, we go in our unconscious every day and we all make the same 30 mistakes. Now, it's a play on words. Sometimes they're not mistakes, they're just missed opportunities, the things that we're not truly seeing. So the 30 chapters, it's very short and succinct. The 30 chapters are the mistakes. So what we do is I highlight this in the book, you read it, and the theory is you will read it and go, I do that. Why do I do that? Does it serve me well? And it either challenges you to make a change, or if you're on top of it, continue doing it. So yeah, it's gone down really well. I only ever wrote it to give my kids a copy and my wife and a few clients, and I sold 3,000 copies so far. So I'm happy with that.
Wow, yeah. Available on Amazon?
Awesome.
Available on Amazon, absolutely available on Amazon on Kindle or hardback.
We'll put the link in for sure. Well, we're an hour and 20 in, and it doesn't even feel like 20 minutes, let alone an hour and 20 minutes.
Wow.
But well, I think it's safe to say, as long as we can encourage you back on the show, I think we'll be talking again very soon, Martin. I mean, we've not even scratched the surface on stuff really. It'd be awesome. Yeah, it'd be awesome to have you back on very soon. Actually, I mean, and there's loads of actual top topics we could feature or drill down on. You could ask our audience and likewise yourself as well. What is it that people are wanting to us to focus on by sitting down with you? One thing that's really cool is that we interviewed Wayne Audsley, who's a mate of yours, and he gave us two contacts. One which was yourself. And you got to us before we contacted you, and you did that because we stood out. I mean, you've got 10,000 on LinkedIn, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
absolutely.
there's a lot of noise on your LinkedIn, and for us to not only stand out, but for you to see what we're doing and how we're doing it, and then to want to come on the show and approach us, it is massive, and that's our team are going to hear this, and we're so proud of the late nights that our team have pulled to make this happen in a short space of time. So there's no better there's no better praise than that, really, for you to approach us to be on the show. So that's massive. That really means a lot, and
welcome.
It's been great to have you on. Where can people find you? Where can people connect with you?
So yeah, I mean, there's multiple places. You know, if you want to watch some of our videos and listen to some of our podcasts, we've got a YouTube channel. You can just search for Martin Johnson on YouTube from T2. I mean, we're Trans2 Performance, but you can just put in T2 and it's all there. Our Hubcast, our podcast series is the T2 Hubcast. That's available on all platforms, really, from Anchor to iTunes, Spotify, whatever your preferred medium is. So you just search for T2 Hubcast and you can listen to more of our content with our other consultants and guests ourselves. You can find us online at www.trans2performance.com. And other than that, I think that's about it. We're on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and all the usual stuff. I don't manage those accounts. I've got a wonderful occupational psychologist called Lydia. She's fab, and she pumps out a load of good content on our social media platforms. So if you're interested in personal development and growth and these types of topics, then check it out. I'm sure there'll be some of use.
Yeah,
awesome. That's great. Thank you. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I think the great thing I've taken out of this, or something for Phil, is that just to keep patience, because clearly you do get those moments of genius with me, Phil. So continue to stay strong in this relationship.
You're capable of them.
Brilliant. He's going to use that forever, Phil. Remember, I'm a genius. It's going to come at some point.
If we can tailor that survey so it's purely a 4. It's just like not only we've only had 80 people being number 4, but we've never had anybody who's nothing else.
Well, I'll tell you what. If we test you two before the next podcast, and then we'll reveal the results live on the podcast.
That'll be awesome. That will be awesome.
Let's do that.
Okay. Brilliant.
Awesome. Martin Johnson, until next time, which I have a feeling won't be that far away, it's been an absolute pleasure. This is about value to our audience, and this is the start of a great relationship and of us connecting and connecting with both sets of our audiences. So thank you very much.
Guys, thank you. I loved it. The time's gone quick, and I'd be delighted to come back on again. So just let me know, all right?
Yeah, brilliant. Awesome. Thanks very much, Martin. Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, mate.
See you later.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Business Lockdown.
Please comment, like, share and subscribe to help build our global community.
We look forward to seeing you all soon.